I found out my wife cheated on me with our realtor, then secretly signed over our $500, $0 inheritance and our family home to him. Now he's trying to take everything in court while she claims she's innocent. How do I fight this betrayal? Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this, but here I am. The whole thing started with what seemed like a small, almost insignificant gut feeling. You know that uneasy feeling you get when something's just off but you can't quite put your finger on it? Yeah, that was me. My wife Emily had been acting weird for a few weeks, avoiding my eyes, canceling plans last minute, and there were these little things that didn't add up. She'd suddenly become obsessed with her phone, always hiding it when I was around, texting at odd hours, and her excuse was always work or urgent calls. I brushed it off at first, thinking maybe she was stressed or just busy, but deep down I knew something was wrong. We'd been married for about 8 years, and in that time I thought we had a good thing going. We had a beautiful house in the suburbs, a decent life, and a kid on the way. I was a successful guy, worked as a sales manager, made good money, and thought I had a partner I could trust. But the signs kept piling up. Emily started dressing differently, more provocative, more confident in a way that felt like she was trying to send a message. She'd come home late from work meetings, but I'd find her phone open on the bed with texts from a realtor named Jake. I'd see her laughing at something on her phone that she quickly hid when I walked in. Little things like that. One night, I came home unexpectedly early from a business trip. I usually called her when I was on my way back, but that night I thought I'd surprise her. As I unlocked the door, I heard muffled voices coming from the bedroom. My heart started pounding. I quietly crept closer, peeking through the slightly ajar door. There she was, Emily on top of Jake, the realtor we'd been dealing with for the house. She was moaning and they were clearly having sex. I froze. My stomach dropped. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was like my worst nightmare had come true. I didn't make a sound. I backed out slowly and went straight to my study. I spent the night trying to process what I'd just seen. The betrayal wasn't just about the sex. It was the fact that she'd been lying to me for months, hiding this from me while pretending everything was fine. I felt a mix of anger, hurt, and confusion. How could she do this to me, to us, to our family? I couldn't sleep that night, replaying everything in my head, wondering how long this had been going on and what it meant for our future. The next morning, I knew I had to confront her. I couldn't keep pretending I didn't know. But I also knew this was just the beginning of something much darker, because I had a feeling that this wasn't just about her cheating. There was more to it, something sinister lurking beneath the surface. The confrontation was inevitable. I woke up early that morning, my mind racing, trying to figure out what to say, what to do. I knew I couldn't just pretend everything was normal anymore. I needed answers straight from her. Emily was still asleep when I approached her, her face peaceful in sleep, but I knew better. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, and then I woke her up. "Emily," I said, my voice trembling a little, "we need to talk." She opened her eyes, blinking sleep away, and immediately I saw that defensive look come over her face. She sat up, stretching, and tried to act innocent. "What's wrong? Did I forget something?" I looked at her, knowing that this was the moment I'd been dreading. "I saw you last night with Jake in our bedroom doing whatever you two were doing." My voice cracked a little, but I kept my composure. "How long has this been going on?" She scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Oh, so now you're accusing me of cheating. Really? That's rich coming from you. You're hardly the innocent one here, Mike." I clenched my fists. "Don't give me that. I saw you. I saw the way you looked at him, the way you were acting. How long has this been happening?" She sat up straighter, crossing her arms. "It's none of your business. You've been working late, ignoring me, and suddenly you're acting like I'm the bad guy. Maybe I needed someone who actually paid attention to me." Her words stung, but I pressed on. "Don't try to spin this. I saw the texts on your phone, the ones you hid from me, the ones where you're planning to meet him again. How could you do this to me? To our family?" She looked furious now. "I was just having some fun, Mike. It doesn't mean anything, you're overreacting. You're always accusing me of stuff. Maybe I needed some excitement, or maybe I just got tired of pretending everything was perfect. That's when she dropped the bombshell I wasn't prepared for. And as for the house and the inheritance, yeah, I signed everything over to Jake. I thought it was a good deal. He's been helping me with the paperwork, for the sale. You're just jealous because I found someone who actually cares about me. I stared in disbelief. She had secretly signed over our $500, $0 inheritance and the family home to Jake. How the hell did she manage that? I had trusted her with everything, our savings, our future, and now she's giving it all away to this guy. And she's acting like it's no big deal, like she's the victim here. I felt my blood boiling. I knew I had to step back, breathe, and think. But inside, I was furious. This wasn't just infidelity, it was betrayal on a level I'd never imagined. She was lying, cheating, and now she was handing over everything we had built to a stranger. That night, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the walls that suddenly felt like they were closing in. I didn't know what to do. My mind was racing, trying to process the shock, the anger, the heartbreak. I'd been a good husband, a good father, and I never thought I'd end up in a situation like this. But here I was, facing the harsh reality that my wife had been cheating on me, lying to me, and now was trying to take everything away from me. I knew. This was only the beginning of what was coming next. After I confronted Emily that morning, everything changed. She kept insisting she was innocent, that I was overreacting, that I was just jealous and paranoid. She even threw in the classic line, "You don't understand how stressful all this is for me," like she was the real victim. But I wasn't buying it. Her calm, bitchy attitude was infuriating. She acted like she was the one in control, like I was the one losing my mind. I decided I needed to find out exactly what she'd done with the house and the money. I started digging through our bank accounts, emails, and the paperwork she'd signed. Turns out, she had secretly signed over the deed of our house, our family home, the one I'd worked so hard to pay off to Jake. Not only that, but she transferred the inheritance money into an account that was now in Jake's name. She'd been planning this for weeks, maybe months. The more I looked into it, the more I realized she'd been orchestrating her betrayal behind my back. I was furious but also scared. This wasn't just about her cheating, she was trying to take everything away from me. I contacted a lawyer immediately. I told him everything, the affair, the signing over of the house, the inheritance. He told me I had a good case to challenge the transfers and the ownership of the property, but I knew this was going to get ugly fast. Emily wasn't going to give up her new partner so easily. She was already spinning a story, claiming she was innocent, that I was crazy for accusing her. She told friends I was paranoid, jealous, basically painting herself as the victim. Meanwhile, Jake was playing it cool, acting like he was just helping Emily with some paperwork, but I knew better. I had seen the texts, explicit, suggestive, and full of promises. They were planning to run away together, I was sure of that. I even found proof that Emily had been meeting Jake in secret at a condo downtown, sometimes late at night. She was lying through her teeth, claiming she'd only made some business contacts with him. Yeah, right. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and completely lost. I started questioning everything, my judgment, our marriage, my own worth. How could I have been so blind? I'd always thought we had a solid relationship, but she had been planning this behind my back all along. I was a fool for trusting her. I was angry at myself for not seeing the signs sooner, but mostly I was mad at her. Mad that she could do this to me, to our kid, to everything we built. As days went by, I started putting together a plan. I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything. I was going to fight for my rights, for what was legally mine. I knew I couldn't just storm into court and demand everything back. I had to be smart. I began gathering evidence, consulting with my lawyer, and preparing for a fight. I also hired a private investigator to verify some of her activities and track down Jake's other dealings. I didn't trust her or him anymore. I had to be ready for whatever was coming. That night, I sat alone in the house, feeling the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. I looked around at the home I'd worked so hard to build, now feeling like a prison. I thought about the inheritance. what was supposed to be our security, and how Emily had just handed it over to a stranger. I felt the sting of loss, of betrayal, and a burning desire for justice. I knew this wasn't over, not even close. I'd fight for what was rightfully mine, and I'd make sure Emily paid for what she'd done. I didn't know exactly how yet, but I was determined. This was just the beginning of a long, ugly battle, and I was prepared to see it through. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I threw myself into the legal process, trying to understand every detail, every loophole Emily might be exploiting. My lawyer, a sharp guy named Mark, was a lifesaver. He told me that based on what I'd shown him, I had a strong case to challenge the transfer of the house and the inheritance. Still, he warned me it wouldn't be easy. These things rarely were. Emily had clearly planned this, and Jake was probably involved in some shady dealings behind the scenes. I felt like I was fighting not just her, but an entire system designed to protect people like her. Meanwhile, Emily kept up her act of innocence whenever I confronted her. She'd throw tantrums, accuse me of spying, call me paranoid, and claim I was just jealous of her new life. She insisted she was the victim, that I was the one cheating on her with my workaholic tendencies and neglect. The words stung, but I knew better. She was a master at lying, twisting everything around to make herself look innocent. She even went as far as claiming I was abusive, which was so far from the truth it made me sick. All I ever wanted was honesty and loyalty, and she had given me neither. One night I caught her trying to secretly meet Jake again. I followed her, tailing her to a downtown condo. I saw her slip inside and my stomach clenched. I managed to get a quick photo of her entering, and I knew that I had to act fast. I showed the photo to my lawyer, who told me to file an emergency motion to freeze her assets and prevent her from transferring anything else. I also started drafting a detailed affidavit, listing everything I'd uncovered. It was a mess. Her betrayal, her lies, her attempt to steal our home and inheritance. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. At the same time, I began to feel the emotional toll. I was angry, yes, but also deeply hurt. I'd always thought I was a good husband, that I provided and protected my family. To find out she'd been cheating, lying, and secretly signing over our assets, it shattered my trust in her and in myself. I'd sit alone late at night, wondering how I'd let things get so out of control. I'd always been the steady one, the guy who kept everything together. Now I was just a man betrayed on every level. It was hard to keep it together sometimes, but I knew I had to keep fighting. For me, for my kid, for what was right. The court date was set for 2 weeks later. I prepared myself for a battle I knew would be long and ugly. I gathered every piece of evidence, texts, emails, photos, bank statements, and hired a forensic accountant to trace the money transfers. As I worked through the details, I started to realize just how deep Emily's deception went. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. She'd even gone as far as creating fake documents to cover her tracks. I felt like I was in some kind of nightmare, but I also knew I couldn't let her get away with it. That night I sat in the dim light of my study, feeling exhausted but oddly determined. I thought about what I'd learned, how Emily had lied, cheated, and betrayed everything we stood for. I realized I had a choice. I could let her win, give up, and walk away, or I could fight for what was mine. I wasn't going to let her take everything I worked for. I was going to see this through to the end, no matter what it took. I knew I had a long road ahead, but I also knew I wasn't going down without a fight. This was about justice, about reclaiming my life from the chaos she had created, and I was ready to do whatever it took. The court date finally arrived, and I was a nervous wreck. Sitting there in the courtroom, I felt like everything I'd worked for was hanging in the balance. Emily showed up looking smug, acting like she had everything under control. She threw me a glance that was full of contempt, like she thought she'd already won. Jake was nowhere to be seen, but I knew he was lurking somewhere in the background, probably trying to figure out how to spin his own story. My lawyer laid out everything, the signed documents, the bank transfers, the evidence of her meetings with Jake, the secret emails. I could see Emily's face twitching, trying to keep her composure, but I knew she was panicking inside. She kept insisting she was innocent, claiming she never signed anything, that I was just jealous and paranoid. She even tried to claim that I'd been abusive, that I'd been controlling, things I knew were lies. The judge looked skeptical, and I could tell he was starting to see through her bullshit. Then I presented my evidence. The photos of her entering the condo, the bank statements showing the transfers, the signed documents, everything. I explained how she'd secretly signed over our house and inheritance, how she'd been planning this for months, and how she'd lied to me every step of the way. I saw her try to object, try to spin her lies, but the judge wasn't having it. The courtroom was tense, and I could feel the weight of what was happening. As the hearing went on, I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. Relief, because I could see that the judge was taking my side, at least for now. Anger, because I knew Emily was capable of anything. I also learned that she had hired her own lawyer, one who was trying to argue that she was a victim of circumstance, that she'd been manipulated and coerced into signing those papers. It was all a lie, but I knew she'd try to spin it that way. That's when I realized just how much she was willing to lie, cheat, and manipulate to get what she wanted. The judge finally made a ruling. He ordered an immediate freeze on all the assets transferred to Jake, declared the sale of the house invalid, and set a hearing for a full trial to determine the ownership of the property and the inheritance. I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders, but I also knew this was just the beginning. Emily wasn't going down without a fight, and I had no illusions that she'd accept defeat easily. I could see her seething as she left the courtroom, and I knew she'd be planning her next move. That night, I sat alone in my house, feeling exhausted but oddly victorious. I'd taken the first big step toward reclaiming what was mine. I'd exposed her lies, fought for my rights, and forced her into a corner. But I also felt a deep sadness over the betrayal, over the loss of trust, and over the fact that my family had been torn apart. I couldn't change what had happened, but I knew I had to keep going. I had to stay strong and stay focused on the fight ahead. Emily might have thought she could get away with everything, but I was determined to make sure she paid for her betrayal. I'd come too far to turn back now. This was a war, and I was ready to win it. In the aftermath of the court ruling, things moved quickly. Emily's attempts to spin her narrative fell flat, especially once the evidence was laid out so plainly. The judge's decision was clear. The transfer of the house and inheritance was invalid, and I was entitled to reclaim what was rightfully mine. But winning in court was only part of the battle. The real damage, trust, emotional stability, the wreckage of our family, was the harder thing to fix. I spent the next few weeks sorting through the mess. The house was technically still ours, but Emily refused to leave easily. She threw tantrums, accused me of ruining her life, and tried to claim that I was the one who had manipulated her into signing everything over. Her words were venomous, her lies more desperate than ever. I had to keep my distance, knowing that she was trying to turn everyone against me, painting herself as the victim. I stayed calm, focused on the facts, and let my lawyer handle her manipulations. Meanwhile, I also had to deal with the emotional fallout. The betrayal cut deep. I'd loved Emily, trusted her. I had built a life with her, thought we were in it together. To find out she'd been cheating, lying, and secretly handing over our future to Jake felt like a punch to the gut. But I also realized something important. I was stronger than I thought. I had fought hard to protect what was mine, and I refused to let her destroy me. I started going to therapy, not just to cope with the pain, but to rebuild my confidence and understand how I'd let things go so far. The hardest part was watching her try to manipulate the situation, to ruin me in any way she could. She even tried to claim I was abusive, which was completely false. I stayed quiet, refused to stoop to her level, and let the truth speak for itself. I knew I had the moral high ground, and in the end, that mattered most. I focused on my son, making sure he felt loved and secure despite everything. I wanted him to see that even in the face of betrayal, staying true to your values and fighting for what's right is what truly matters. Eventually, Emily moved out. She refused to accept the court's decision immediately, but the legal process moved swiftly. I got full custody of our child, and I began rebuilding my life piece by piece. It wasn't easy, and I still had days where I felt broken, but I refused to let her win completely. I learned a lot through this. I learned to trust my instincts, to stand up for myself, and to never ignore the red flags again. Most importantly, I learned that betrayal doesn't define me. How I respond to it does. Looking back, I realize I dodged a bullet. The pain of betrayal was immense, but it also opened my eyes to who Emily really was, someone capable of incredible deception and selfishness. I don't wish her ill. I just want to move forward, knowing I fought for what was right and that I am stronger than I ever thought possible. I hope anyone reading this who's going through something similar remembers. Don't stay silent. Fight for yourself, for your rights, and for your peace. Because in the end, the truth always comes out, and the only way to survive betrayal is to stand tall and refuse to be broken.